Now, the title blocks, like I said, is we'll go ahead and open this up, the family itself, so you can see how you can adjust it. Um, I don't recommend trying to play around with it too much. All right, but obviously, you're probably not going to want the Autodesk logo and stuff up here. All right, but to open this title block up to edit it, right, is the title block is also a family. Okay, so you have to open it just like you would um, a window or a door. Okay, so if you select your title block, all right, and if you come up to the top here where it says Edit Family, click on Edit Family. Okay, and actually, before we do that, I apologize, I'm going to X out of this view. Right, just hit No on this. Right, is before you do that, just until you're comfortable with it, is I would recommend if you go to View, right, if you're in this sheet, just click this Close Hidden button. All right, so basically that's going to close all the views behind that you don't have open. So right now, the only view that it'll leave open is the sheet view that you're on. Right, that way it keeps it a little bit easier to distinguish between what windows are open. All right, because you'll see in a second when we open up this family view, all right, it will open up the actual family editor. And if we're looking and going between the two windows, between the family editor and the actual project itself, it gets a little confusing as to which one you're in. So if you have less windows open, the better, and it kind of negates that confusion. All right. So if we select the title block again, and we go ahead and click Edit Family, all right, that brings us into the family editor. All right. So like I said, is the fact that we're in our family editor now, we're not in a project. It looks very similar to the regular project, right? Aside from some of the tabs on the top, all right, it's very hard to distinguish between the two. All right, but if you were to tile your windows, all right, and you had them next to each other, you can see here on the left, right, this is the family editor. On the right is the project. All right, so unless you're clicking in the two of them and looking intently at the ribbons on the top, right, very hard to distinguish the two. Right, like I said, that's why it's a little bit easier if you close all the windows out that you're not working in. All right. So in the family editor, all right, we're not going to go and adjust everything in here, all right, but I'll show you the kinds of things that you can do. Essentially, your logo on the top here, this is just an image that they loaded in, so you can delete that out. And if you go to the Insert tab, so the same way that you drop an image in to your projects, you can drop an image in here as well. So if you just hit Image, you can bring in, a logo, anything like that. All right, some of these, so like if you click on some of the values, so where this says text, all right, you can delete it or you can go ahead and change it, all right? So if anything's in here and it says text under the type, right, you're fine to adjust those as is, all right? This as well, so text, all right, so all these consultant areas here, you can adjust all these, okay? This area here where it has the revisions box, right? You'll notice if you click on this, it says schedule graphics. All right, so this is a schedule that's driven off of information in your Revit model. Okay, and so what you can do is, you can go through here and you can resize it. Right, that's not going to harm it, and you can move it around. Or if you don't want it here at all, right, for some reason, you can completely just delete it. Right, if you have no use for, the revisions. Okay, you can delete it out, but what you don't want to do is, really mess around with it other than the size, okay? Because the fact that it gets driven by information in Revit, right? Unless you specifically know what you're doing when you're changing things around, I don't recommend you going through and actually making any adjustments to this other than the sizing of it, okay? Client name, right? If you click on this, right, and look over in the properties, is you'll notice that instead of text, it says label, okay? Now, anything in your title block here that is a label, all right, it's driven, the value of it is driven by some sort of parameter in your model, right? So if you remember the client name and the project name, these automatically update with the project information that you fill out, right? That's because they're what are called labels and they read certain information, all right? So if you have any of these values that are labeled, all right, I don't recommend you play around with the settings for these, right? Obviously, if you want to go in, to the type here and change the text size, right? That kind of stuff is fine. The color, background weight, and all this kind of visual stuff. Okay, so in the type settings, but the actual label itself is I wouldn't play around with any of this. Okay, because that stuff, again, if you're not familiar with it and you don't know how to set it up, um, you can screw around with some of the values there, and so it might not automatically pull information in for you. All right. Same goes with project name. That's a label. All right. Sheet name, label as well. All right. So most of these are going to be labels down here in the bottom. All right. And again, they're labels because they all run off of different parameters in your project. All right. And so either A, you can change around, just the visual settings of them, right? If you want to change text sizes or whatever, obviously you can move these around to wherever you want them to be. All right. But just try not to fool around with the actual settings for the label itself. All right. Now, as the sheet goes, okay, so you can see these lines that are coming in here. All right. If you select these lines, these are basically just 2D lines. All right. So you can see the categories here. All right. Lines, medium lines. And the same kind of thing goes here as well as, under the Manage tab. All right. You have all your line styles and line weights and line patterns. Right. And so you can change your line patterns and the set them, accordingly to whatever line weights and things you like. All right. And so you can go and change these and move them around and, make the adjustments that way. All right. So you can either, make the sheet larger, make it smaller, whatever you might want to do. Okay. All right. And so once you've gone and made any changes here, all right, and you're kind of getting ready to bring this back in and use it, all right, you're going to want to save it. But before you actually click save, all right, make sure you don't accidentally click save right off the bat, right? Make sure you do a save as, right? Because if you do click save, it's going to save over the original default file. And I don't recommend ever saving over the default files, the original, all right? Just because if something ever happens to that file that you modified, all right, you always have an original to go back on. Okay, so I always recommend making sure you come in here and doing a save as, right? Some of you who, tend to forget that, maybe right when you open up the file or the family, is go right in and do a file, save as. That way you don't accidentally go through and hit save. All right, so maybe get in the habit of that. Whatever ends up working for you, okay? But now let's say we go and we make the changes that we want to. All right, is maybe we move things around, readjust the way that it looks, something like that. All right, we've done a save as. All right, and we have our changes. Is now there's one of two things. If you already have a project open, so like we do here already, all right, you can either A, go back into your project and kind of load this title block in the same way you would load any other title block in. So if you go to insert, do a load family, all right, and then navigate to wherever you save that title block, all right. Or what you can do is if you're still in your family editor, all right, you notice at the very top is you have load into project or load into project and close, right? So what you can do is if you click load into project, all right, it'll ask you if you want to save changes. In this case, because this is still my default one, I'm just going to hit no. All right. But what that'll do is it'll load it back into your project. Okay. So now you have the new title block in here. All right. And what it'll do is actually, if I open this back up, all right, let me make a change here. Move that. If I load into project, all right, it'll ask you, you're trying to load a family in here that already exists. All right. And it'll ask you if you just want to overwrite the existing version or overwrite the version in its parameter values. So if for some reason you went in here and you changed some of these values, right, whether it's the labels or anything like that, is if you want to overwrite just kind of the visual look of it, or if you want to overwrite all of its parameters as well. All right. So depending on what you've changed on it, you may decide which one you want to choose. All right. I'm just going to do overwrite existing version, right? And you can see now that that should automatically update with the new title block, all right, and any of the changes you ended up making. Okay, and so again, if you feel comfortable doing it, just do it kind of slow and steady and kind of go in there and adjust your title blocks around, again, whether it's dropping a new logo onto it or something like that. Okay. But make sure that you do a save as and you don't accidentally save over the original title block. Okay.